We left off with kind of an argument going on here. God is trying to reveal himself to Moses, but Moses isn't buying it yet. I know that because of what happens after. In order for you to accomplish what God has given you to accomplish, I want to go to chapter 3, verse 10, and I want to say that there has to be a crucial lie defeated in your life. Nobody in this room is exempted from this. You will not accomplish God's will for your life if this one lie isn't rooted out, beaten, stamped, squashed, bent, folded, mutilated, destroyed, ridded from you. And that is that success in the mission depends on your abilities. That's a lie. The success of your mission does not depend on your abilities. By the way, if you're an astronaut, success in your mission probably does depend on your abilities. If you're an athlete, success in your mission probably does depend on your abilities, at least to some extent, and your training. But as a believer, success in the endeavor is not bounded by our abilities. It's bounded by our submission. That's what determines whether you'll be successful. Now, I want to take you to 3:10, and this is before Moses is a great leader. This is his classroom in the Midianite school for ministry. He's in the desert, and the teacher was the creator. And the lesson was about Moses' 4 flawed views that pushed him to 4 flawed confusions. He made wrong conclusions about things because of his flawed views. So let's peek behind the rocks and let's listen in on the conversation between the Most High and Moses. And here's what you'll hear. I want to break the lesson into 3 simple components. 3:10 is God's call. 3:11 to 4:17 is Moses' problems, or what I sometimes call Moses moaning. Moan and mow. And 4:18, Moses' submission. It ends on his submission, but the bulk of it is going to be him moaning. Now, I tune into his moaning because the 4 flaws of logic that are there are the 4 that I have had to deal with in my life and that I suspect you have to deal with in your life. Let's go to the call first. Therefore, come now, I will send you to Pharaoh so that you may bring my people, the sons of Israel, out of Egypt. Now, I want you to notice 2 things about the call. First, it's based on what God had already shared. Hence, it's the word therefore, right? He said, on the basis of the fact that I already know what's going on and I am engaged with the people, I have therefore decided to send you. The second thing is that the call was certain. The goals were not unspecific. The process was unspecific. God said, I have a goal. I'm going to set my people free from that land and bring them to this land. That's the goal. Now, how does that work? Yeah, he didn't tell them anything like that. He just said what the goal was. He said, I want you to know the purpose of your venture, but not necessarily the process of it. You don't get to know how the process works, but you get to know what the process is goaled for. Now we get to Moses and we get to his problems. I want you to be a little bit sympathetic with Moses, okay? His questions are all legitimate questions. Granted, he sins in the process, but I understand where he's coming from. So let's look at verse 11. Moses said to God, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh, that I should bring the sons of Israel out of Egypt? I call this the who, me problem. He looks at, number 1, his insufficient ability. That's the first thing he looks at. He goes, yeah, I don't think I have what it takes. I don't have the stature to pull this off. You want me, Midianite shepherd, ex-con prince on the run, to stand up to Pharaoh? I don't think that's really right. Look, the idea that Moses had was not an unfamiliar one, and that is that God has stranded us on some fallen island with a purpose of making changes that we can't pull off. In and of itself, that's not untrue, it's just unfinished. That's true. God has stranded you on an island to pull off things you can't. But that's not the end of the sentence. The end of the sentence is, and therefore he will do it through you and in spite of you, all at the same time. If you stop the sentence early, you end up with the problem. if you continue the sentence, you start to understand, yes, it is true, I am a despicable sinner. However, that's not the end of my story. Redeemed, how I love to proclaim it. Now, I want you to see God's response. What is his response? There are two parts to it in 12. He says, certainly I will be with you, and this shall be a sign to you. It is I who have sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall worship God at this mountain. Okay? He ended up with two things, my presence and my promise. My presence, I'll be with you. My promise, you're coming back to this mountain right here. See this mountain right in front of you? Yep. You're coming back to this mountain and you're going to worship God with your people. You're going to stand right here and you're going to confirm what I said to you this day in a future day. That's my promise. Now, can we all understand that it didn't look like it was going to work? The actual probability of success apart from God was, well, exactly 0. But with God, it was 100%. Now, I want you to notice God offered nothing to Moses but himself. But there was nothing higher to offer. There was nothing better he could give him. So, ultimately, the ability argument comes down to a lie that we believe, that God isn't big enough to pull off what he says he'll do because we're so small we'll foul it up. That's the lie. And Christians swallow that lie all the time. They believe that God can save them, but he doesn't have the power to conquer their addictions. Or they believe that he can raise the dead, but he can't soften them to forgive their enemy or overcome their racial prejudice. They believe the Spirit empowers them, but not that they have all that they need to live a godly life. Now, if you're not stuck on the who me problem, you may be stuck on the second one, which is, how's that? The second problem comes up in 13 to 22. Listen to it. The idea is, I lack sufficient understanding for me to get a clear direction from God. Listen to what he says. Then Moses said to God, behold, I am going to the sons of Israel, and I will say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you. Now they may say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? He says, I don't have the knowledge to pull this off, Lord, because I don't even know what your name is. By the way, he's not wrong. Is everybody in the room ready and prepared to say, we have insufficient knowledge to pull off the ministry God would have us pull off? Yes. None of us is so smart that we have all of it figured out. That's not the point. God didn't say, listen, when you get everything worked out in your theology and you understand everything about the Bible, then you can start ministering. He did not say that. In fact, some of your most effective ministry you'll trip into. You'll like accidentally lead somebody to Christ, seriously, you did something really dumb and then they got into your life and then you cried and then they talked to you and next thing you know, you're praying with them. I mean, seriously, stuff like that happens all the time. Now look at God's response in verses 14 and 15. God said to Moses, I am who I am. Okay, is everybody ready to stop there for a second? Does that not sound like a lawyer talking? I am who I am. What exactly does that mean? Let me ask this question. What would the alternative be? I am who I'm not? I'm not who I am? What is the alternative here? But he's not playing games. That's not what he's doing. He's telling you something very profound about himself. I am who I am. What is that context? The context was they said, I don't even know your name. I don't know who I'm saying has sent me. And God says, I'll tell you who I am. I am who I am. And then he said, thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, I am has sent me to you. You know why? Because Israel's God was I was. I used to be. I was the God of your father Abraham. He said, that's not who I am. God is the ever-present one. What does that mean? Not only that he's always hip, he's always relevant. That's not it. The point is, I'm not yesterday's news. I'm right where you are, right now. That's where I am. And this was a group of people that knew freedom 10 generations ago, but now knew only slavery. So it looked like God left them behind. And he says, no, I'm right here with you. I don't know if you've ever maybe this hasn't happened to you. Have you ever had somebody so hurt by life that you sat down and they just, it's not that they didn't want to believe in God. It's not that they grew up wanting to be atheists. They were so hurt they couldn't conceive that there could be a God and they could be in the situation they're in. I was sitting with a kid who lost his mom, and he wasn't trying to be atheist. He just could not get his mind around if there's a God, how can I possibly have this level of searing pain and God be in heaven? How can that be? This is 10 generations of slavery. This is people getting their backs beaten. So ask the question, why is God saying, I'm not, I was, I am, and you'll understand. God furthermore said to Moses, thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, has sent me to you. In other words, I am and I was. I am the character of the God that was with your fathers, but I am here now. God therefore said to Moses, thus you shall say to the sons of Israel, the Lord, the God of your fathers, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has sent me to you. This is his name forever. This is my memorial name to all generations. I need you to understand that God has only one name. He has many, many titles, but he has only one name. The name is an acronym. The name is I was, I am, I will be. That's what Yahweh means. It's an acronym of I was, I am, I will be. In other words, at the end of everything, I always have been and am right now. That's his name. We simply contract it into the word I am. But the important thing is this. God's response to your insufficient knowledge to get the job done is, I'll fill you in on the way because I'm with you. I'm not just with you, but I know your situation. I'm here. I'm present on the earth and I'm engaged in what's going on. See, this is a smack at theistic belief, where God wound up the watch and let history flow. No, he says, no, I am, not I was. I'm right here. Then verse 16 says, by the way, I have a plan. Go and gather the elders together and say to them, the Lord your God, your fathers, God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, has appeared to me. I am indeed concerned about you and what has been done to you in Egypt. So I want you to go, get the elders, put them in a room, sit down and tell them God knows what you're going through. Okay? So I said, I will bring you up out of the affliction of Egypt to the land of the Canaanite, Hittite, Amorite, Perizzite, Hivite, and Jebusite, to the land flowing with milk and honey. This is my plan. I get where you are, and this is where I want to take you. Everybody on that page? Now follow this, because then he turns around and does something that's absolutely stunning. Look at verse 18, look at the first phrase and underline it. They will pay heed to what you say. So you're going to know that I'm with you because the elders are going to go, amen, we're with you. And you, with the elders of Israel, will come to the king of Egypt, and you will say to him, the Lord, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. So now, please let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness that we may sacrifice to the Lord our God. Notice, it does not say, I'm going to set you free. It does not say here, go to him and say, we want to be free of slavery. This says, thus says the Lord God, give us 3 days to go worship our God. So when they throw it down, they already know that God's going to take them out of the land. That now God begins to reveal the process. For the first time, they're starting to see how it works. Okay, so step one, here's the first card you play. Play the 3 days in the wilderness card, and you throw that one down. Now, here's the thing. It says, please let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness, we may sacrifice the Lord our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not permit you to go. Underline that one. This is going to become relevant in this lesson. He's not going to listen. Are we all on the page that God just said, he's not going to listen? Here's the funny part. When they get there and he doesn't listen, they're shocked. They're absolutely blown away that he doesn't listen. They go away despondent because here we thought he was going to listen. He said he's not going to listen. So I will stretch out my hand and strike Egypt with all my miracles, which I will do in the midst of it. And after that, he will let you go. Do you see that when God revealed the process, they weren't ready to hear it? Because when the next story happens, they're going to be shocked when exactly what God says happens. I am amazed at the number of people that will read the Bible and somehow not just take it at its word, and then when what happens is what it says is going to happen, they're surprised. Now, take a look at this. I have a long-term purpose for these short-term painful delays, God says. You're going to get delayed, but don't worry, I got a purpose for it. I will grant this people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, and it shall be that when you go, you will not go out empty-handed. Every woman shall ask of her neighbor and the woman who lives in her house articles of silver, articles of gold and clothing, and you will put them on your sons and daughters. Thus you will plunder the Egyptians. He says, I'm working a plan here, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to have you go in and say, let my people go, like Charlton Heston did. And Pharaoh's going to go, no. Then I'm going to work all these miracles, and by the time you're gone, they're going to be throwing silver and gold at you and saying, just get out of my house, take all my stuff, but go. I'm going to make all this happen so I can fill up your bank account. Now here's the ironic part. They get cash and prizes, and then they get sent to the wilderness where you can't spend it, which is great. You know why? Because God's going to ask them to give it back in the last part of the book in the tabernacle. He's not just filling their wallets, he's filling his tabernacle. They just don't know that yet. So here's what it says. Maybe you're one of those people. Maybe you're caught up in the who me problem, or maybe you're caught up in the how's that problem. Well, God's answering. How about this one? What if? Here's the what if problem. I think maybe I have insufficient faith to embrace this promise. Moses said it this way in chapter 4, verse 1. Moses said, what if they will not believe me or listen to what I say? For they might say, the Lord has not appeared to you. I want you to note that God had already given the truth. They will pay heed to what you say. So do you understand the difference between 4:1 and the earlier questions? He is now, as a believer, standing up and saying, God, what you just told me is true isn't going to happen. Now he's crossing a line with God. See, it's okay for you to say, how can these things be since I know not yet a man, like Mary said. But it's not right for you to say, after he told you how, that it's not going to happen. That's where he crossed the line. There's an issue here, and if you're going to grasp what God says is true, you have to trust the truth when he gives it to you. Okay, so God answers, I will send you with power. Listen to this, verse 2. The Lord said, what's in your hand? He said, a staff. Then he said, throw it on the ground. So he threw it on the ground. It became a serpent. Moses ran away from it. Why? Because that's what you do when a snake pops out. But the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand and grasp it by its tail. Now listen, you don't have to know a lot about snakes, but one of the things you need to know about snakes that are poisonous is never grab them by the tail. Why? They'll swing around and bite you. He says, I need you to do what is utterly counterintuitive and you're scared to death to do right now. Okay. So he stretched out his hand and he caught it, and it became a staff in his hand. That they may believe that the Lord, the God of your fathers, God of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, has appeared to you. The Lord furthermore said to him, now put your hand into your bosom. Basically, he says, stick your hand under your wrap. So he doesn't have buttons, but he does this kind of thing. He sticks it in there. And he says, when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous like snow. It dried out all the skin on the hand, that fast. Then he said, put your hand in your bosom again. And he's thinking, well, okay, maybe he'll make it better. He can't make it worse. So he stuck it back in there. And he said, so he put in his hand in the bosom again. When he came out, behold, it was restored like the rest of his flesh. If they will not believe you or heed the witness of the first sign, they may believe the witness of the last sign. But if they will not believe even the two signs or heed what you say, then you shall take some water from the Nile and pour it on the dry ground, and the water which you take from the Nile will become blood on dry ground. Now, I need you to look at some essential truths here. First, God has never promised to empower your abilities to meet your plans, but he's never failed to give his power to his plan. So don't get the idea, Moses, what do you got? Is not a question of, Moses, I'm going to add to you. He says, I want to use what you have. God empowers what you have. And he never demands submission to what we don't have. Only what we have. God selected you based on your ability. He knew exactly who he called to do the job he's called you to do. Now, second thing I want you to notice is God calls you to follow his word, even if it's counterintuitive and contradistinctive to your past experience. Even if every snake you've ever grabbed you didn't grab by the tail, if he tells you to grab it by the tail, that's where you grab it. It may not seem right to you. It may seem totally stupid to you. He's not asking your opinion. He's telling you what to do. Would you be open to the idea that God knows outcomes you don't know? That we can make all the social experiments we want in our society, but we don't know where they're going, and God does? He knows where the diseases are that we haven't even figured out yet. So while we're busy cutting down our rainforests, we're probably killing our future pharmaceuticals. We don't know that. He knows that. So when he says, don't do it, that would be a reason. Now, third thing I want you to notice. God needs to remind us something. Why did he tell him to stick his hand in and then pull it out and the flesh was all white? I suggest to you that he needed to remind Moses that the flesh was weak, temporary, and unstable. You're not going in your power, you're going in mine. You will fall apart. Me, I don't. In fact, I can use what's defective and I can use what's defiled because leprosy is a defiling mark. Our brokenness doesn't make us unusable. Sometimes it's the very thing that makes us usable. Your biggest problem might be your biggest asset when God gets a hold of it and it's submitted to him and you're cleansed. That's a wonderful thing. That informs everything. That's the reason why in my heart of hearts, I'm not all offended about the sexual proclivities of people. That's not my issue. My issue is surrender that to God like everything else and it'll get fixed. Because there's none of us that are righteous. No, not one. The fourth thing, let me just see if this works for you. The fourth thing is God alone can restore what's broken. God's the only one who can take a broken hand and make it well. He's the only one who has the ability in human rebellion to fix what's wrong. So you go with God or you go with nothing. And God says, listen, all I want, Moses, what do you got? Well, I don't really have anything. I got a stick. Okay, give me the stick. I'll use the stick. Well, that's not like cool. That's just a stick. That's all right. I can turn it into whatever I want it to be. Stop thinking you have to somehow get the cool stuff to do the stuff for God. You just give him what you have. He'll turn it into something. That's the cool part. Now, the last question is the with what group. Because people look at their resources and they go, I don't think I have the inner abilities to pull off ministry. See, that's the point of verse 10. Chapter 4, verse 10 says, Then Moses said to the Lord, Please, Lord, I have never been eloquent. I don't speak well. Not in time past, nor since you've spoken to your servant. Did you notice what it says? I didn't grow up speaking well, and I still can't even after I met you. That's what he said. I'm slow of speech and slow of tongue. God's answer is so simple. It's elegant in verses 11 and 12. I know your problems really well. He says, Who made man's mouth? Who makes mute, deaf, seeing, blind? Is it not I, the Lord? By the way, that's a great verse. Don't lose that verse. That verse says God makes some people blind. It's not a defect. It's the way God created them. Why? Because he is the Lord and he has a plan. And they fit that plan. We tend to look at people with a defect as though somebody did something wrong. God tends to see it as part of his plan. Remember, who did sin? This man or his parents, that he was born blind, they said to Jesus. He said, oh, no one sinned. He's blind so I can heal him today. And you go, wow, that's great. Yeah, it wasn't great for the last couple of years while he's sitting there blind. But here's the thing, your best day is the day God touches you. So in a way, his blindness made it so that the King of Glory would touch his eyes. Now take a look at this. Verse 12. Go, and I, even I, will be with your mouth and teach you what you are to say. Notice it does not say I will speak for you. It says I'll train your mouth what to say. There is a discipline involved in being used of God. You must learn to say what he tells you to say. See, look, the bottom line is our inadequacies aren't our problem. Athletes and celebrities, talented all, have proven over and over that ability is not the singular key to success. How many of us know stories of people who were incredibly able and flopped? And yet, I know stories of people who are incredibly inept, who are doing great things for God. The only thing I can tell you is that the part that really God didn't like was when you get down to verse 13. He said, please, Lord, now send the message by whomever you will. Do you know what he just said? God, I'm really all in favor of this message. Can you send somebody else? Because here's the thing that God was looking for in this whole tug of war. Just say yes. Sign on the dotted line that where I send you, you will go. What I tell you to say, you will say. And he says, yeah, I've been making excuses, but here's the real truth. I just don't want to do it. I wish we could all be as honest as Moses. I wish that I could be as honest as Moses and just go, you know what my real problem is, Lord? I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I want to be like everybody else and have their stuff and have fun, and I don't want to do this. That's at least honest. Now, here's what's interesting. I want you to get down to verse 14. Then the anger of the Lord burned against Moses. What was the anger over?
The fact that he was doubting God because he wasn't saying sin because God already said working through him. So he's doubting God.
He's doubting God and he's rejecting. He's not signing on in 13. So 14 is God got miffed. So look what God does. When God gets angry, he doesn't do what I do when I get angry. When I get angry, I usually hurt somebody. God doesn't do that. Here's what he does. He says, hey, you got a brother, right? Is there not your brother Aaron the Levite? I know that he speaks fluently. And moreover, behold, he is coming out to meet you right now. I got, enter Aaron stage right. God's doing this whole directing of this thing. Now watch this. Does everybody remember what happens with Aaron? He becomes the biggest pain in the rear that Moses ever had. Why? Because he became the problem. God accommodated Moses. You don't want to do it? You don't think you speak well enough? I'll give you Aaron. But here's the thing. Then Aaron's going to do stuff that really messes ministry up. Why? Because you wouldn't listen to me and do it yourself. So God gets angry with him. But what he does is he says, okay, I'll play. I'll send your brother. He's a good speaker. He'll speak for you, except for when he speaks against you with your sister. And that'll become a problem for Moses, and it'll break Moses' heart. In other words, our disobedience today sets up our broken heart tomorrow. And that's exactly what he's doing. Sometimes our excuses pile up and get in the way of doing something for God. And can we all agree it's easy to do the wrong thing and it's always harder to do the right one? It's just easier for a room to get dirty than for it to get clean. I don't know why, it just is. It's easier for things to fall apart than to stay together. Everything that's worth anything in your life will take work, and work is the last thing you want to do to keep it together. Look at the last verse, 4:18. This is Moses' submission. I love this. Then Moses departed and returned to Jethro, his father-in-law, and said to him, please let me go, that I may return to my brethren who are in Egypt and see if they are still alive. And Jethro said to Moses, go in peace. The bottom line I need you to hear is this. When we say to God, I can't, what we really mean is I won't. When we try to look at God and say, I can't, what we mean is I won't. Face facts. We disobey because we choose to. That's just the truth. Not because we have to. Taking responsibility for that and walking in intimacy and surrender will make my life what God created it to say. He wants to speak through my life, but I'm going to need to agree to his terms. Here's what God won't do. God won't stop being God so I can be God. He won't say, well, look, Randy, I really have this great plan for your life. I'll just let you run the universe. I think a lot of us really are playing a lot of excuse games. Now, I need you to understand that what God uses And so God gives this incredible object lesson. I want to go back just over a couple verses before I go on, because this is a pivotal passage. By the way, in Exodus, chapter 4 and chapter 12 are your two pivotal passages. Somewhere make note, chapter 4 is where God really deals with Moses, and chapter 12 is where God really deals with Israel and gets them at the Passover. Those are the turning points of the book, okay? So let me stop and just say, the problem of the passage we just studied wasn't the call of God, it was Moses' reaction to the call. Do we all agree with that? God's call wasn't the flaw, Moses' reaction was the flaw. Probably the most important thing I could say to you is when I read the anger of the Lord burned against Moses back in verse 14, I'm going to say this, I'm going to say it clearly, I'm going to say it calmly, and it will ruin your life. Are you ready? Running from God's call is not safe. At some point in the future, the Spirit of God will remind you of this. Running from God's call is not safe. When God calls you to do something, you are absolutely indestructible until He's done using you doing it. And you are in incredible danger trying to do anything else. You can stand in the middle of a battlefield and be where God puts you and be safe. You can slip in the shower and die trying not to be. Let's just put it this way. Nineveh was safe. The belly of a fish, not so much. So, I want you to see that I have to listen to His call carefully. And because that's true, there's something else. In some ways, I want you to look back at that stick for a minute. Do you remember, what do you have in your hand? I have a stick. A dead piece of an old tree. A has-been of botany. I mean, really. That stick could not of itself bring life. It was just something dead to lean on, to balance yourself. Moses had no idea what important plans God had for the stick in his hand. And the point is that the rod was just like Moses. Nothing special of itself until the power of God touched it, then it's transformed. So I want you to see that stick and see why God used the stick. I think it's important that we, the empowering, supernatural empowering of God operating through us is something that God will do in your life. Look, we need to ask God to get in our staff, to get in our song, to get in our preaching, to get in our marriage, to get in our parenting, to get in our business, to get in our gifts, to get in our talents. When God gets into something, it's not the same. It changes. God got in a rock and it caused water to flow out of it. God got in a donkey and it caused him to be a rebuke to a rebellious prophet. God got into an axe, a head of iron, and made it float. God got into a pot of oil and caused it to keep on growing. When God gets in it, it changes what it is, but it also changes what it accomplishes. So the question isn't, do you have God? The question is, does God have you? Does He have you? Because Moses' rod symbolized something weak, something that had no life, no energy. I love one of the greatest problems. I think one of the greatest problems we have as believers is the tendency to underestimate what we have. I think that at your age, where you are in life, some of you have only learned to look in the mirror and see your flaws. That's all you see. You see what's not good about you. I think that some of you have come to the conclusion that if God's going to do anything in your life, He's going to have to change you so dramatically because who you are, you don't feel good about. Here's the truth. With God's authority, God's power, and God's presence, everything changes. A stick becomes a snake like that. You're not far behind. You're stubborn, and so am I, and that's our problem. I should show respect to those in authority over my life, and I'm so glad that when Moses got called by God, where's the next place he went at the end of chapter 4? Where did he go?
He went back to Jethro
Went
and said, I need to
back to Jethro and got permission to go. I think when we get into the God called me mode, we dare not forget the people that we are made responsible to already. I run into this, and I'm just going to tell you this. A lot of GCBIers have run into it too. God calls you to the next thing. You don't drop what you're doing right now like a hot potato and leave everybody hanging and run off. You learn how to transition to obedience and to drop things into the hands of people carefully so that they can continue. And here's the thing. What would have happened if Jethro said, yeah, okay, Mo, I'll let you go, but I need you to stay until after we're done shearing? What would have happened? God is moving the furniture so much that he is positioning Aaron to be walking toward him at the right time. Do you think that took God by surprise? If that happens, that delay of permission is God at work. Just because he called you to do it does not mean you get to drop everything now and go running out the door. You go to those people who you're responsible to, and you get permission to do it, and you do it in an orderly way, and if they delay you, God is in the delay. How frustrating is that? All you have to do is go to a parent and say, I really want to marry him, and they say, okay, I need you to wait a year. That's frustrating. But see, God's in the delay. Because something may happen in the next year and you don't know what it is. A third observation. When I look at chapter 4, look at verse 19. Now the Lord said to Moses in Midian, go back to Egypt, for all the men who were seeking your life are dead. One of the things I have to do when I get God's call is trust that God is working in other places to prepare them for me, not just me for them. See, one of the things we do is am I being prepared for my mission field? Well, the question is your mission field being prepared for you? Because I got to tell you, I was a disaster on the mission field, and they needed to be prepared. Look, prudence is a God thing, and so is trust. Moses had a perfectly acceptable check in his heart about going back, and that was the wanted posters with his face on them. And so God said, yeah, they took all those wanted posters down. That post office is closed and those people are all dead. So Moses said, okay, I can go back now. Not the least of which is I don't think he looked like the spring chicken he was when he ran out of Egypt anyway, but that's just me. I think now with the beard and whatnot, he's pretty well covered. Okay, let me give you a fourth observation. And I'm just throwing these observations out there from chapter 4 because I think they help me. I should step out and accept the fact that God has help for the journey he gave me. Look at verse 20. Zero in on this. So Moses took his wife and his sons and mounted them on a donkey and returned to the land of Egypt. Moses also took the staff of God in his hand. I can't help but read that with a smile, because he took his wife, took his sons. Oh yeah, that stick. I got to take that stick. And here's the thing. He wasn't holding her hand. He's holding the stick. He's like, yeah, this thing turns into cool things. I got to tell you, you're just like, wife, kids. This is cool, let me tell you. So he's got the stick in his hand. One of the things you have to do is you have to be able to trust that God is going to partner you off with the right people on the journey. And I think that's what verse 20. Look at 21 to 23. I'm almost done. I should rehearse often the revelation of what God has said about my life. Look at what he does. The Lord said to Moses, when you go back to Egypt, see that you perform before Pharaoh all the wonders which I have put in your power, but I will harden his heart so that he will not let the people go. There it is, a second time. Does everybody see it? Before he said you're going to go, and the people will accept you, and Pharaoh won't. This time he says you're going to go, you're going to do some cool things in front of Pharaoh, and he will not let the people go. This is all important because when it happens, Moses is going to be all dejected because it didn't work. Because he had his heart set on being victorious. Because we go in to our new church and we expect the entire community to get saved and come to our church by the second week. Why? Because we are here with the call of God. And the truth is, it doesn't really work that way. Here, God was warning him. Listen, buddy, you're setting yourself up for a fall here. I'm going to have you go in there. You're going to do really cool things. Everybody's going to go, wow, great tricks. And Pharaoh's going to say, yeah, not so much. Get out of here. Verse 22. Then you will say to Pharaoh, thus says the Lord, Israel is my son, my firstborn. So I said to you, let my son go that he may serve me, but you have refused to let him go. Behold, I will kill your son, your firstborn. Yeah, that's going to make you incredibly popular with Pharaoh. So right at the very beginning in chapter 4, he's already looking at him, leaning into him and going, you're going to end up having to tell him that I'm going to kill his kid. Does anybody think at this point Moses is going, yeah, I think maybe I would rather not do this job? Now, verses 24 to 26, here's the point. I have to fully obey what God told me. My new call doesn't cancel my obligation to prior commands. So it came about at the lodging place on the way that the Lord met him and sought him to put him to death. Look at verse 24. Somebody tell me what's going on. God has Moses and his family hot on the trail to go see Pharaoh and nearly kills Moses. Anybody mystified? Wait a minute. Moses is following God going to Pharaoh. Why does he try to take his life? It literally says, it came about at the lodging place on the way. The Lord met him and sought to put him to death. God wanted to kill him. Why? Any takers?
He didn't circumcise his son.
Yeah. Here's the thing. He got so excited about his next vision of ministry, he forgot to be obedient in the one he was in. He was so excited about the next thing, he wasn't paying attention to the one he was in. You don't get to do that. Zipporah got it. She took a flint, cut off her son's foreskin, threw it at Moses' feet and said, you are indeed a bridegroom of blood to me. So he let him alone. And at that time she said, you are a bridegroom of blood because of the circumcision. She said, you made me do this. Listen, here is a pattern that I want you to see. It's the Adam pattern. When the man doesn't do what God calls the man to do, he forces the woman into doing it, and she resents having to lead where he was to lead. This is going to happen in a home you're in. And at some point you need to face up to the fact that it is the job of each of us to do what we are called to do. Okay, here's the thing. While Moses was there, he had two sons by his wife. Gershom, but by the way, that means alien. Gershom, alien. And Eleazar, God is my helper. Gershom appears to be the eldest and was likely born when Moses was feeling a bit alienated from the people, and he was kind of a stranger in their midst. Later on, God is my helper seems to be the post-fire burning bush son. Okay? And here's what I want to do. I want you to drop your eyes down to 27 to 30. I'm almost ready for a break here. It says, now the Lord said to Aaron, go to meet Moses in the wilderness. So he went and he met him at the mountain of God and kissed him. Moses told Aaron all the words of the Lord which he had sent him and all the signs that he commanded him to do. And then Aaron and Moses went and assembled all the elders of the sons of Israel. And Aaron spoke all the words which the Lord had spoken to Moses. I want you to see, he gets the team. Now we're building. Get the anthem music going. It's going in the background. Now look at verse 30. He performed the signs in the sight of the people. Okay, we got the loud music is playing. Signs and wonders. Power of God stuff happening. Verse 31. So the people believed, and Moses was just flying high. They were going, Moses, Moses, he's our man. And they were all with him. And when they heard that the Lord was concerned about the sons of Israel and that he had seen their affliction, they bowed down and they worshiped. And he was just standing there, and there it was, the whole place was worshiping, and there was just tears in people's eyes, and they were like throwing money at the offering plate, and people were giving their firstborn child, and the whole place was coming apart. Praise band got up and was playing. The lights went low. Everybody's sobbing. Got big lighters going. I guess, and everybody's having a time, and God is right there. And what's interesting is when you follow the story, he got emotional support from his brother. He got the affirmation of the crowd. He got camp exhilaration. Everybody dancing around going, oh, Moses, God is working with you. He got the exhilaration of obedience, and you get to 5:1, and he stands in front of Pharaoh, and he says, all right, you haven't seen me at the last crusade, but we had 1 million people, and they were all with their big lighters. Pharaoh, let my people go. But Pharaoh said, yeah, no. Who is the Lord that I should obey the voice and let Israel go? I do not know the Lord, and besides, I will not let Israel go. Then he said, the God of the Hebrews has met with us. Please let us go 3 days' journey into the wilderness that we may sacrifice the Lord our God. Otherwise he will fall upon us in pestilence or with a sword. But the king of Egypt said, Moses and Aaron, why do you draw the people away from their work? Get back to your labors. And again, Pharaoh said, look, the people of the land are many, and you have made them cease their labors. Can you hear it? Can you hear it? That's the sound of breaking glass in the background. The shattered dream of Mo. Because Moses shows up with the crowd going, walks into the throne room, let my people go. Yeah, no. I'm not doing that. I don't really care what they said. You know what I care about? There's a million people out there. They're not working. Get them back to work. Moses is walking along. I think that the next minute when he stepped forward, the stick was dragging. Because the whole thing, that's not what Moses thought would happen. You know what's really weird? His reaction. Look at chapter 5, verse 22. Somebody read 22, out nice and loud.
Then Moses returned to the Lord and said, O Lord, why have you brought harm to this people? Why did you ever send me? Ever since I came to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has done harm to his people, and you have not delivered your people at all.
And you know what? God could have said, asked and answered already. Go 2 chapters ago when I told you he's not going to listen, and I'm going to use these delays to fill up your purses with gold and silver. What about what I already said did you not understand? When I twice told you, and he will not listen. And by the way, he will not listen. Did you think I meant he will listen? The problem that believers have is that we create this whole thing in our mind of how we think it's supposed to go, and when it doesn't go that way, and somehow God is to blame. When God already laid out how it was supposed to go. And we end up, look, frustration is the distance between what you think should happen and what God makes happen. That frustration, you created that. When I walk in and I'm just doing what God said, I can surrender the results of it because that's not my business. That's God's business. It's easy to say, it's hard to do. You be a faithful mom and you raise your child in the nurture and admonition of the Lord and have them spit in your face and walk out and not follow God and tell me you're not going to feel like Moses. You work really, really hard at trying your best to model Jesus Christ for your little sister or your little brother, and they grow up and they prove very effectively to be the junior version of the Antichrist. And you tell me that you're not going to feel a little bit ripped off. Somewhere in the process of this thing, we've got to learn God's call isn't about the results. It's about our surrender. It's always been about our surrender. Take a break.